Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. And today we are joined by guest Terry Zimniak, and he has been a fractional cybersecurity executive for about 10 years. And Terry, you essentially help the little guys with their security, so startups and SMB businesses. So how did you get into this line of work?
Well, I like to think that I was cyber before cyber was cool. So when I got into college many years ago, I was at a small group doing PC tech kind of networking sorts of
Mm.
stuff. And what I found is that I was good at a lot of things. I wasn't great at anything in particular, but I was pretty good at databases, pretty good at networking, pretty good at programming, all those other things. And back around 2000, when I really got into security, that was really what made you a good cybersecurity person is a broad range of technical skills. So when I was doing, for example, penetration testing, I'd need to understand emails and networking and applications to tie that together to do whatever testing I may be working on. So it was, again, just that I was moderately competent at a whole lot of things, maybe a good cybersecurity guy 20 years ago.
That's
Um,
music to a chief of staff ears because we're generalists, so we know a lot about a
there you
whole
go.
bunch of things. But yes,
There you
we're
go.
we're the cybersecurity equivalent of whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the progression of the career was I was a cybersecurity technical guy, breaking and being paid to break into companies and architecting big solutions and working for a consulting company. And one of the salesperson came around and she says, "Hey, a client's asking about HIPAA. What's HIPAA?" We're like, "I don't know what HIPAA is." So I kind of quietly raised my hand, like, "I don't know. I will." I guess it's even before Google. I wouldn't Google it. I would Yahoo it or whatever the search engine was 20 some years ago. So I went out and print out the HIPAA regulations and I became the HIPAA guy. And that's where a transition from being real technical into more of the compliance and eventually up to the executive suite is I could transition and translate between the technical and the regulations and the business side. So kind of the second phase of my career, Emily, was at the executive office. So I've been a chief information security officer of big healthcare organizations is where that led me to. And that was a lot more conversation of really more risk than technology. So I wasn't tasked with necessarily doing firewall configurations anymore or penetration testings anymore. It was how secure does the company have to be? Because you're never 100% secure. You could always spend more money. You could always buy more widgets, but you're never going to be done with security. So that's what helped me start thinking about security a little differently. Is it's a risk, it's a business risk conversation, and that's where I transitioned into that point of view.
Yeah, so you're kind of the translator, you're combining all these experiences into more of a strategic, let me look at this holistically type of point person. So you mentioned you can never be secure enough, or excuse me, you can always add more to your security layer. If you're a startup or a small to medium business and you got dozens of things flying around competing for your priorities, how do you know if you're secure enough? So I think a term that I've heard you use is somewhere between Fort Knox and irresponsible. So where's the balancing act in between those two?
That's exactly for the smaller companies. The line really is around you need to be secure enough to sell.
Mm,
And if you think about that, you really can kind of articulate and be pragmatic, and you can really understand what that means. If you're selling to consumers, they have certain expectations. The consumer protection agencies, the FTC and the states have protections.
right.
If you're maybe selling into a hospital, there's different expectations. Selling to a bank, to the government, to the military, whoever your buyers are, have expectations. So to be secure enough to sell means understanding who your stakeholders are, understanding their point of view. And that may well be you've got to be HIPAA compliant, you've got PCI credit card requirements, state laws, whatever it may be. But with a little bit of thoughtfulness, it doesn't become quite as nebulous as just secure. It's we know the expectations and we know how to get there. It may not necessarily be an easy journey, but the idea of secure enough, if you do the work, you really can understand that with some degree of specificity.
And when you said PCI compliance, I had flashbacks to one of my previous jobs where we worked with a number of financial institutions all over the world. And I remember the compliance requirements being especially high in Europe, in certain financial
Yep.
institutions there. And in fact, I think a Japanese company, a Japanese bank, had to come on site every year. So we would host these gentlemen who came on site to our office, and then they would have to go physically see our servers in that day and age. Like physically, we drove them downtown. They would put eyes on the servers for 2 minutes, and then we would drive them all the way back to the office, and they had to check that box. But there's different levels of security there. So understanding who you're selling to, and then is that a risk mitigation strategy saying, okay, we're not going to be able to sell to these people if they have concerns about our security? Is that turn into an advantage or a selling point? How do you think about that?
Well, there's a couple pieces there. One, Emily, is some of the expectations are prescriptive. PCI, for example, says, thou shall do this. And it's very clear, and you've got a series of check boxes, and there's a lot of check boxes, but it's relatively easy to say, yes, we're done, or no, we're not. On the HIPAA side, or there's other sorts of frameworks, it's more squishy where it says, you've got to look at this area of risk and you have to have a reasonable response to it. So that becomes the risk conversations. We don't have very
Reasonable.
clear, yeah, exactly. And that's where becomes a risk conversation. But you did bring up a second distinct point that I would love to dive in a little more on is the business value. So for these small, mid-sized companies, if they can say, hey, prospect, let me tell you, let me lead the conversation on cybersecurity. We're not Fort Knox yet, but we're certainly not irresponsible. We have a plan. We thought about this and we're working towards that. And you can create, as a small, mid-sized business, a cybersecurity story that you can tell to show competence, to show that it's one of the important mission drivers of the organization. And that can be something you lead with, and that may well be a differentiator. I've had clients that I worked with when I came out, and one of the things I usually talk to them right off the bat is, why do you want to be secure? So, as I'm going to be a fractional executive security guy, we need to make decisions as a business leader. Why are we doing this? And typically they'll say, well, we have to because we have expectations and obligations. But the good leaders will follow right behind it with, it's going to be a differentiator for us. We're going to talk to our prospects and we're going to say, not only are we great at our standard offering, but we're secure and we're aware of privacy concerns. And the odds of us having ransomware is lower than everybody else. The odds of us getting hacked and impacting you is less than our competitors. So it can be part of that uh, collection of stories that a business leader has to have. And you flush that out, and that's where your value driver comes from.
And I think there's so much going around these days in terms of AI, and AI is great, but there's all these security concerns, and what does that present to our business? And I mean, to your point, it's a story you can tell. I imagine I've been at small businesses where we're trying to get bought, right? We're trying to go out and do the pitch deck and trying to get bought. And you don't have to have everything built, but they have to
Yep.
tell you take it seriously, to your point. So there has to be a roadmap for security, just like a roadmap for your product suite. And so I think if you can tell that story, then people are on board with, we have whatever 10 steps, we've executed steps 1 through 3, and we're working on 4, but we're working our way toward it. I think if you can show that, that has an advantage for you.
Absolutely. And that's where the risk conversation comes in. Maybe we're at step 3 of 10. We could be at 6, but that means we have less money for business
Mhm.
development and we have less business to buy, whatever it may be. So,
Yeah,
businesses only have so much money. You can't spend it all in security.
yeah.
You got to be, again, secure enough, and you got to think through those things. So that's where the risk management and kind of the executive oversight comes into play.
And as chief of staff, I also ran into strategic partners who would want to make sure, like, hey, if we send you data or we're transmitting you data, are you taking care of that in a secure way? And so they would want to check those boxes before they partnered with us. So it could be holding you back from strategic partnerships as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a very big hack that's underway right now. Ascension Health, you may have heard of. I think it's the largest non-for-profit health system in the U.S. The news that came out recently is they believe it was tied to an acquisition they had made.
Oh,
So big organizations buying small
yep,
organizations, and then, hey, I'm buying you and your technology, and you're providing services for a while as we incorporate this small company in the big one. They're in that interim position, and is it that they bought a company that had gaps and holes? Is it that the old company, which was again acting effectively as a service provider in the interim, they were not patching correctly? I think they said it may be tied to a remote access connection or whatnot.
yeah.
But again, part of if you're at an organization, you're looking to be bought by somebody else, you lead with those cybersecurity conversations of, hey, we're HIPAA compliant, we're NIST aligned, whatever it may be. Part of that security is we take our stuff seriously.
So at the top of the conversation, you had mentioned part of your career was trying to break into companies, which I thought was an interesting line of work. What types of things were you doing just out of curiosity? And do you perform similar functions today where I'm going to test your current system? If you're going to hire me as a fractional cybersecurity guy, I'm going to test what you have today.
Yeah, no, I'm no longer the techie guy, so I can speak the language, I understand the technology, but I made a more or less intentional decision, Emily, about 20 years ago to go from technical to non-technical because I think I was pretty good a while ago, but just think of the quantity of the new technology that's popped up in the past 20 years. I mean, wireless and Bluetooth and blockchain and AI is just so much out there. So I would have had a kind of deep dive into kind of a
Yeah.
narrow view of what I could work with. So there was just a lot going on. I saw greener pastures, but um, I, it was fun and I
So
enjoyed it, but that's certainly not my skill set these days. There's better
maybe I
and
was
frankly
I was
cheaper.
thinking about it wrong because I was thinking, "Oh, so when I ran customer service teams, I would call into our service center to have a call. I pretend I was a customer from a different number and things and
Yeah.
test the service." So, but didn't require me to keep up with technology in the same way that you would have.
Right. So what I need to do is that my job would be more along the lines of we should be paying a penetration
Yeah.
testing company to hit us once a year. And we should be testing Emily's resistance to click on bad emails once a month. And we should be training and we should test
Yeah.
our backups. So setting the program, the expectations again to meet with whatever secure enough is, have a roadmap and plan, and then get the right people to do it. There's better people for testing and firewalls and for encryption than me. Agree on the program, and like you said, roadmap. That's really the space that I play in.
And are you working with CEOs, CTOs, CFOs? Who do you work with at a company on the roadmap?
That's an interesting question. It really varies because in cybersecurity protections, there's a lot of facets to it. Typically, you talk about people, process, technology. So your
Mhm.
protections will fit in one of those buckets. It's two-thirds technology, but there's people aspects of it. There's process aspects of it. So typically, what I do is I play above the CIO level. So the protections that we need articulate in that roadmap, and then say, hey, CIO, your technical executive,
Yeah.
these are the 30 things you must address. Go address them. Let's have a conversation, make sure it's working, roadblocks, whatnot. You deal with these 30. And then the HR people, these three you're responsible for.
Mm.
And then the finance, these five you're responsible for. And then, perhaps the security executive me would say, I'm responsible for policies. I'm responsible to make sure we do tabletop exercise. So again, we agree on a roadmap and then we divvy up the work to the right people.
Now, how do you typically approach companies? Is it they come to you because they've had a cybersecurity breach, so they're like in fire drill mode? Oh, holy bleep! Please help us. Or do you have people being proactive, saying, "I understand the importance of cybersecurity. Terry, can you and your team, I don't know, run an 100-point audit on us and see where we're strong and where we're weak, and come up with a roadmap from there?"
It's interesting. I probably should have named my original company that Holy Bleep Cybersecurity. That would have been good. I like that. It What I find is my clients that I work with really come with one of three problems or maybe focal points. One is you're right. I've just been hacked. We got a mess. We got a train wreck on our hands. We got to clean it up.
Yeah.
So that's the more traditional one. Second is I know someone who's been hacked,
Mm.
or I have kind of an existential concern in this nebulous gray cloud of cyber concern over my head. And I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So that kind of, we just need to get better. I'm not sure exactly why or what the line is. The third one's a new one. I think it's an interesting pivot is several of my new clients have come to me with a specific problem of, I'm trying to sell my service to someone else, but they won't buy it because I can't show them I'm secure enough.
Yep.
Again, we talked about the breaches and attacks that are happening out there. A lot of times it's partner companies getting breached and causing problems for the big guys. So, in particular, healthcare, about half my clients are healthcare. If you try to sell into an insurance company or to a healthcare organization, they're going to give you a giant list of like 500 questions and show me these things are all addressed. Or they're going to say, show me you have a SOC 2, show me your height, whatever
Yep.
it may be. But it's, again, the basic concept, are we secure enough? You've got that clarity, but it's a big ask to say, validate all the stuff and show me you're secure. So that third bucket, it's helping companies become secure enough to sell is really a big driver for me lately.
And if a chief of staff or an executive is listening to this and look, they have 12 different things they could spend budget on, and like, we're pretty secure, we don't have a problem today, cross our fingers, we don't get one. First of all, it'll only take once before you divert all of your resources into security. But to your point, if they look at their strategic planning for the next 18, 24, 36 months and partnerships or acquisitions or
Mhm.
any sort of interaction with another company that might have security as a concern, if that's on there, is that also an impetus to say, okay, let me get ahead of this thing, let me be prudent and thoughtful and partner with someone who can get us up to speed on cybersecurity now?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it is showing value of your organization. If you can show a level of maturity for your key programs, your finances have to be in order, your HR has to be in order, technology and security have to be in order. But I'll tell you one other point that these chief of staff or maybe audience may be tuning in on is the idea of business resiliency. That's been a big topic in cybersecurity lately. It's that we know that we're not going to stop all cyber issues. Bad things are going to happen. Hopefully there's small bad things and hopefully they don't happen often, but they're going to happen one day or another. How does your business survive if holy bleep happens, right? What do you do if you get the ransomware? What do you do if Terry clicks on a link? What do you do if Emily loses her laptop that has data on it? The idea of business resiliency is, again, we're avoiding the best we can, but if something happens, how do we not go out of business?
Yeah.
And that's really been a big focus that the non-security executives are pulling on that thread. And that seems to have a lot of visibility with those folks.
And how do you work with teams on that? Because I'm assuming, a big chunk of your work is let's prevent this thing or do everything we possibly can to prevent this thing. But if and when these things do happen, you have to be able to flip over to a contingency plan where people aren't running around with a like a chicken with their head cut off and they're like, "All
Mhm.
right, like code red or whatever it is, let's fall into line and do what we have to do to stop this thing as quickly as possible."
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want to put all your eggs in the basket of, let's make sure it never happens. Again, we want to put enough there to handle the majority, the vast majority.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you keep spending money, you're not going to necessarily get any more secure. Business resiliency really is more of the business part of cybersecurity. How do you make payroll if your payroll company goes offline? These things are happening these days where there's big organizations going offline for weeks,
Yeah.
big problems. What do you do if you can't communicate? You can't do development, you can't write your code. If whatever your offering is, most likely it depends on some level of technology. What if that technology is not there? What if someone redirects payments and you've got a big bucket of money you can't receive for a while? Another recent cyber hack people may have heard of is Change Health. Change Health is the entity behind the scenes that really facilitates a lot of the pharmaceutical payments and insurance clearing. That was offline for 6 weeks plus. There's literally billions of dollars stuck in the funnel
Ah,
because the approvals and the transactions aren't happening. There are small clinics where the doctors are taking out mortgages to pay their staff. What if your money's stuck in the system? What are you going to do about that?
yeah.
So, more broadly, business resiliency is a conversation on business impact analysis. What's important to you as a business? what do we do if your technology fails? And it could be a couple hour exercise just to talk through those sorts of scenarios, but it's really not a cyber issue. It's a business conversation, but it's part of holistically how to protect business.
Just out of curiosity, if someone is sitting there listening to this and saying, I just want to test how secure we are there like literally two or three things you could say, all right, send this type of thing or do this just to see where you are today?
Not really, because if it was that obvious, the bad guys would already have taken over and
Okay.
you'd be done by now if you have those problems. But a couple of bits of guidance is um, most, I guess most people are using cloud services these days. So I always remind people like they forget, make sure your cloud services are secure. So you're using Google or Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
They are responsible for things like backups and encryption. They do the foundational stuff, but do you have ex employees with access to the systems? Have you turned on multi factor authentication? Do you have enough administrators? So if Emily, the administrator, is gone, do you have an administrator who can get into Google Workspace?
Yeah.
Or do you have too many administrators? Is everyone running as administrator? So there's basic checklists out there for Google Workspace, Microsoft Office, Twitter, X as we call it these days. All of those cloud services have best practices. Review those sorts of things. That would be one great place to start is make sure your cloud's secure. The guidance is out there. Just go hunt it down and work through it.
And what non-technical things should we be considering? I mean, I know there's cloud, there's technology, there's all these different payments going back and forth through the ether. What are the non-technical components we should be considering?
Well, I probably a couple things. One is cyber issues are always people issues. Computers would be incredibly secure if there were no people involved. It's
True
always a
story.
people problem. So building the culture of cybersecurity, if you have a healthy culture, you have a healthy culture when Emily will raise her hand and say, "Oh my gosh, I clicked on something I don't think I should have."
Ah, yes.
You don't beat up Emily. You say, "Thank you for letting us know." You may have some additional training, but you want the culture that people are reporting things because you're not going to see everything. So people's a big part of cybersecurity. Process is a big part of cybersecurity. The one of the most common cyber attacks out there over the past decade or so have been redirection of payments. So, hey, I'm your partner. Please redirect your $100,000 invoice to this new bank routing information. Extremely common. It's been happening all over the place for a decade. FBI flags it constantly as like the biggest cybercrime out there. You can't use technology to solve the problem. If I send an email to, again, Emily, and you get it, and you believe I'm your partner, and you change the bank routing information based on Terry's email, the money's gone. No amount of technology is going to solve that problem. Processes will solve that problem. So Emily has a process where she checks with, I don't know, a partner or peer to validate. So those sorts of basic process controls are a big part of cybersecurity. So definitely don't spend all your time and money in technology. It's not going to get you to the promised land. I'll take the Terry Crew advice. Be good at everything. Don't try to be great at any one thing.
And I worked for a background screening company a while back, and we had a required security training that we went through, I think,
Mm-hmm.
every 6 months, and it was kind of this, like, long and laborious thing you had to go through, but
Yeah.
it had some good stuff in there, and we had an alias and, like, a hotline if I clicked on something, if a member of my team thinks they kind of sort of maybe clicked on something, you would call, and we had a dedicated team, and they did nothing else, and we were a global company, and they took calls from people who were
Mm-hmm.
doing this, I mean, it was annoying in some ways, but I knew that I had that hotline. So I think what you said about the culture, and we don't beat people up if they raise their hand and say, "Oops, I'm so sorry. I was moving fast. The email
Yeah.
looked like it was from my boss and I clicked on it." That kind of culture piece I think is huge. So are there any other tips for people who are listening going, "Yeah, I don't know if we have that. How do we instill that?"
Well, I tell you there's a lot of good frameworks out there, cybersecurity frameworks. And the advantage of a framework is so then it's not, well, Terry says we're secure, therefore we're secure. You follow established frameworks that are out there. There's the ones people may have heard of. NIST CSF is a big one that's out there. There's smaller ones out there dedicated to like health services and what. But find a framework that works for you. If you're maybe not medium, but if you're a small business, go and Google FTC cybersecurity. The FTC has great guidance on cybersecurity. It's like 40 things, and it says make sure you have insurance. Make sure your backups, make sure you're multi-factor. It's a basic checklist that small businesses can work through. If you're, I don't know, 50 employees up, if you get to that close towards medium, you need something more robust. So find a framework, because again, it gives you a comprehensive review of what you need to do. It talks about business resiliency. It talks about backups. It talks about firewalls. It talks about encryption. So the advantage of the framework, again, is that you have a collection of knowledge from experienced people over the years that have built this to say, hey, these are the 100 things you need to look at. So they're a really big fan. Plus, then when you start telling your cybersecurity story, that's what our business owners are going to start doing. Your cybersecurity story is, hey, Emily's company is working on the NIST CSF alignment. We're
Mm,
80% of the way there. It gives you kind of a standardized language that other businesses will understand.
that's a great tip. And we'll have that information in the show notes. And as I was hearing you talk about this, I thought about back in the caveman days, I guess, where someone would pick up a stick and use that as a weapon, and then someone would put hide over two sticks and make a shield, and then they would figure out a way to find something stronger or a weapon to find the weak point of their enemy. And what you're talking about in cybersecurity is almost an extension of that. Okay, now in this day and age, they're going to poke and find your weak points and get in, and then you're going to find something to stop them, and then you have to find something to protect yourself. So it's kind of like this one-upsmanship game. So I'm wondering, is that how you see things, or is that kind of an outdated model? How do you see this cybersecurity? I hate to call it a game, but just the ecosystem.
Well, what you're talking about really is the concept of threats. The threats will change, absolutely. And I don't think we've talked about AI enough. So, ding, 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 AI. Here's our AI conversation. AI is being brought into cybersecurity. So the bad guys are using AI. That one maybe most people would be aware of is in the old days. Hello, Emily. I'm a prince from Nigeria and I have
Yeah.
$100 million. Can I please use your bank account? Nowadays, you can have AI write these things for you. And AI can easily find open source intelligence on Emily. Hey, Emily, maybe your bank records online, maybe you've got social media feeds. So maybe it's, hey, you've missed your tax bill payment in the county of XYZ for so much money. Please submit it ASAP, or we're going to come knock down your door. The point is, these bad emails coming in are getting much, much more effective because AI is going to write them, or is writing them now.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a story recently. This is probably an interesting one. There was a company out of China, I believe, that sent millions of dollars to a bad guy, and the way they pulled it off is the bad guys made a fake Zoom call, and they used deep fake technology to make a fake video of the CEO, a fake video of the CFO, and then they
Wow.
invited this poor schlep from accounting to this video call. The
Oh,
whole thing
no.
was AI deep fake. They convinced the guy to route the money out the window, and it's happening.
Wow.
So again, technology is not going to solve that problem. You solve that problem with processes. The
Mm.
finance guy should have had processes anyway, saying you don't route $1 million without 5 people signing off on it, no matter who tells you to do it.
Wow. You have the protocols in
But
place. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So that's where AI is coming. More social media is going to get, or social attacks, excuse me, are going to get a lot better. Your emails and your videos, voicemails. You can deep fake voices now, so someone can sound like, I don't know, Donald Trump on the phone giving you a call, and it's going to sound like him because AI is doing real time deep fake stuff. So it's out there. You got to train
Oof.
people. Again, it's a people problem.
That's an interesting one. I haven't thought of the deep fake videos and voices, but yes, there's got to be protocols for that. Ooh, even though if it just sounds like them or it looks like them. Something personally happened to me where I got a fraudulent call. And what happened was I got the text and it said, "Oh, from Bank of America, this
Mm,
is the fraud team. There's been a fraudulent. Did you make this charge?" And I said, "No." And then someone called me and they were listing some of my financial institutions, but in kind of a weird way.
yeah.
And the thing that tipped me off to it was the person on the phone was panicked, was trying to create panic in me. And most of the times,
There you
those
go.
people are
Good.
very calm. And so I kept asking questions and she couldn't quite answer them. And I was like, "Where are you from?" And she just kept sounding panicked. And I think that was their ploy. But that's what tipped me off. So sometimes I don't know if there's things just to look for and there's tactics they try to use to create panic or urgency where you can kind of have a
Yeah, the
spidey sense.
yeah, exactly. The easy rule of thumb there is that any communication, email, text, voice you're not sure of, throw it away. Just discard it. If you're really worried about it, call the purported source. So if it claims to be Bank of America, pull out your credit card, look at the phone number on the back, call them that way.
That's
So
exactly what I
throw
did.
away that's there you go.
Yeah.
Throw away the suspect communication and reach out on something you know to be a good channel.
Yes. And kudos to Bank of America. They checked all of their things very quickly and were like, boom, 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 you're good. And I was like, thank you, goodbye.
Good,
But good
good.
stuff. So Terry, if
Yeah.
someone's listening and saying, "Oh my gosh, we've thought of through some of these things, but Terry mentioned a lot of things." How do you work with companies? I mean, I'm sure you have. I assume you have several clients or engagements you do at a time, and you work with people at various levels and capacities. So how does that work?
Yeah, what I do is I work as a fractional CISO, so a part-time cybersecurity executive is what it is. So
Yeah.
I'll come with work with companies to build out a roadmap. You know, what are your issues? What are your concerns? What is your secure enough? We'll have those conversations, build out a roadmap, and then as more of a traditional executive, then say we got a roadmap. Who's the right person to do technology stuff? Who's the right one to do? Do we need a pen testing company? Do we need an auditing company? Do we have internal folks to do desktop? So it's really a slice of an executive is the model that I use. And the advantage of having the executive, I have the executive presence, working with internal and external stakeholders. That's the value that I bring. But the company I work for is Tech CXO, so I'm a partner over there. And if you're interested in finding me, go look up techcxo.com and you can look up Terry. Last name's hard, so good luck searching that. But if you look up Terry at Tech CXO, you'll find me, Terry Zimniak.
And you mentioned a number of your current clients are in healthcare. Is that a specialty, or are you industry agnostic? Who should be reaching out to you?
Yeah, industry agnostic. I do work with all sorts of companies, finance, data analytics companies, utilities organizations. So I work with a lot of companies. Healthcare is my sweet spot just because I mentioned through my career, I've been working as a cyber CISO of big companies. I've got a lot of experience in large healthcare organizations across the U.S., so that's my sweet spot. But generally speaking, most of the problems are pretty much all the same. Again, understand where we need to be from a security perspective, and then how do we get there. 90% of the same conversations, regardless of what industry you're in.
Beautiful. Well, Terry, thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge, and I'm sure it helped people, and hopefully they reach out to you and take cybersecurity seriously. So thank you very much for being on.
It's been a pleasure, Emily. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.